Hi, I'm Sam. This is EV Times. Glad that you could join us today. On the program today, I have asked Nathan King with a company called It's Electric to join me on the broadcast, and we're going to be talking about curbside EV charging. If you're not familiar with what that is, it looks kind of like a parking meter on the side of the street, and you would just plug into it right off of that. So what I'm going to do now is invite Nathan into the call. This usually takes to join us. I'll tell you a little bit about EV Times. EV Times specializes in live interviews with professionals in the electric vehicle industry. So we talk with founders, CEOs, software developers, anyone that's involved in electric vehicles in any way, not just electric cars, but electric boats, electric bikes. All right, it looks like Nathan is in now. Nathan, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Hello.
Great. Hi, thank you so much for coming on.
Nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you as well. Yeah. So I was giving everyone like a kind of a rundown of what It's Electric is about, but I'd love to hear it from you. So,
sure.
Yeah, just tell us all about it.
And I apologize. I'm in transit, so I'm in my Hyundai Ioniq right now. And usually I'm back at our office in New Lab. We're based in Brooklyn. We started about a year and a half ago. So we're pretty much a pretty young startup. And our mission is to bring EV charging to cities. And as part of that mission, we're really focused on drivers who don't really have access to off-street driving. That's a very obvious use case here in Brooklyn, where I'm sitting right now, there's no driveways or garages on the roads. It's also the case even in lower density cities where you have off-street parking, that people end up parking on the street for different reasons. These are people that live in apartment buildings or they rent their house. So it's an urban focused solution, but I like to point out that we're not just about places like Brooklyn and Boston. We're about any city where you have a significant portion of drivers that are relying on street parking. And the way that we deploy something that is referred to as a curbside or street side charging. It's done in different ways, but what we have is a very clean and simple hardware solution that sort of looks like a bollard. It really kind of blends into existing street infrastructure. And the other thing that we're doing that's a little bit different than what's out there today is how we power that charger. Rather than going and connecting directly to the utility main in the roadway, what we do instead is we are going back and connecting to the adjacent private property. So our EV chargers connect behind the meter. And for us, that has a couple of advantages. One is that we don't then need to go through the utility interconnection process, because what we're doing is really after that sort of handoff has happened between the utility and the property owner. And the other advantage is that we can then provide a revenue sharing model with that charger that's connected back to the property owner. And that gets people in the community excited about EV charging. Once you start to change people's parking behaviors, it can be very disruptive. And so the advantage of our model is that we can draw people and as literal partners in the deployment of EV charging in their community. Maybe I'll pause there and see if there's any questions so far.
Well, I've answered a lot of them.
Yeah.
Right in a row, which is awesome. I guess my biggest one is, run me through like a typical charging session. Pull up with an EV. What does that look like? How does it go? All those things. Yeah.
Yeah, and here again, it's important to kind of address our target customer base, right? We are looking at people that put their car on the street and park it there overnight. So not people that are coming to the neighborhood and doing some shopping. These are people who are, this is where basically they use the city street as their driveway. And our customers are already parking where we are putting the charger. And what they do is they pull into the parking spot. And at that point, actually, we operate like any other charge point operator, like Electrify America or Blink or EVgo. You'll have an app or you'll have an RFID card. You'll swipe that on the charging post. One thing I didn't really mention that we're doing that's very unique in North America right now is about how we're dealing with cable management. And what our hardware has is a detachable charging cord. So if you go to our website, you can see sort of what that looks like. And the way that it works is the drivers have the charging cord in their car. So when you pull into the parking spot, you take out your phone and you can authorize the charger with an app or with the RFID card. And once that happens, the charger is authorized. You plug one end of the cord into the charging post. The other end of the cord gets plugged into your car. It stays locked in both ends, so nobody can come along and unplug you. And you start to charge. And most of our drivers they're going to go home and they're going to go to bed, or maybe they work in the neighborhood and they're going to go work their shift. And by the time you come back, you'll have a fully charged battery. We're a level 2 charger, so that's going to fully charge, most light duty vehicles, between 4 to 8 hours. And it's giving city drivers that sort of same convenience of never having to go to a gas station again, right where they're already living. And it's the same experience that drivers who do have driveways or garages experience EVs. And when you're done with the charging, you take out your phone or you take out your RFID card and you deauthorize the charging post. The cable goes back in your car. And then all you're left with on the city street is that nice, clean, sleek charger. I'll say one more thing about the bring your own cord or the detachable cord. This is how it's being done in the EU. In the UK, public charging is generally done with the detachable cord. So much so that when you buy a new EV, you get one of these cords in your car. There's about 6,000 of these kinds of chargers already deployed in London today. And we believe, and we're convinced that places like New York City are going to follow suit. And so we want to be one of the first companies out there. We know that a lot of these UK companies are trying to do these deployments. We're getting out there first as the first US company to offer this model. And initially, we'll have some logistics around providing drivers with their own cord while we wait for the OEMs to start to put them in the vehicles for us. But it's not a big deal. When you're a first-time It's Electric charger, you'll pull up into the spot. We'll have a QR code. You can go right to our site and you can sign up, and we'll bring you one of these detachable cords for your use. Okay, I'll pause there again. Hopefully, I answered that question and more. But
yeah, absolutely, very, very much so. And I was going to mention that, yeah, in the EU, they're already implementing a lot of these technologies already. So it's nice to see that they're coming here. So there is a question in the comments that I'd like to ask to you.
Yeah.
And it looks like they're wondering, can we see what the Ballard EV SE looks like? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a way for us to show that?
Yeah, I wish I had one nearby, but I would say if you go into our website, you can see sort of what it looks like there.
Sure.
And I think a lot of the articles that we have in our Instagram feed have pictures of our pilot site that one of our pilot sites that we had here in Brooklyn. And so you can see photographs of what that charger looks like. It's it's basically basically a stainless steel post. And so there are different pictures of it that you can find through the articles linked in our Instagram feed.
Okay, so for CJ there, that will just so go ahead and check out It's Electric Instagram, and I think also on EV Times you can see it as well. So that would be the best way to see it. So yeah. So what are some of the? It sounds like it's been pretty seamless so far, but what are some of the challenges It's Electric has been facing putting the chargers curbside, or has it been easy? I mean, what's the process been like?
Okay, yeah. So again, we're still very early in our startup life cycle. So like I said, about a year and a half old. Mm-hmm. And in that time, we've done a lot. We've managed to build our first prototypes. We're in the process right now of working on what we're calling our market-ready product and moving that through all of the different safety and third-party certifications. That's all getting wrapped up this summer, so we can then begin to deploy at scale with a fully manufacturable product. The pilots that we have in Brooklyn right now are sort of a closed pilot. It's allowing us to do some user testing and some installation testing. But we're moving towards a point in our, like I said, in our company's life cycle where we have a product that is ready for mass manufacture and mass deployment. So certainly a lot of what we've been working on is that product design, making sure we get the technology right. We want to make sure that once we put these chargers out there, that they don't break immediately. I know that that is a frustration for me as an EV driver, finding that there is an EV charger somewhere and pulling up and it doesn't work. So we're being very cognizant of that and really making these chargers as simple to operate and simple to and simple to maintain as possible. And that's another reason why we like the detachable cord configuration. If the cord breaks, actually it's really easy for us to replace that driver's cord, and our charger isn't down. Like if a charger breaks on an attached cord charger, you have to wait for the company to come back and usually replace the whole charger. It's very difficult to replace just the cord. So that's another sort of thing that we're thinking through and working on right now. I wouldn't say they're challenges, but that's part of the process that we're engaged in right now. I would say the other thing that is a challenge for deployment is because we're operating out here on the right of way, we have to form a different relationships with our city agencies. We need to get permission from the city to do our deployments. Now, that is something that we understand and have built into our sort of company DNA from the very start. And I'll just tell you, like, my background, I'm an architect, so I'm not a car guy. I'm not really a charging person. I came to this company because I saw this problem as an urban design problem. It's an architectural and urban design problem. We didn't have the right thing to let people electrify their transportation in cities. And we figured out like a different way to do it that was very sort of architecturally oriented. Like we're literally connecting back to a building. And so I would say that for us, what we are going to be spending a lot of time right now is finding good partnerships with cities that understand the problems that drivers who live in cities face in accessing charging, and having them help us form these permissions so we can begin to then go out and do the deployments at the scale and speed that we need to do it.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. So definitely a lot going on there. It looks like we have another question from the comments. If you don't mind answering another one here.
Happy to.
From CJ, he's wondering, does it charge in the 9 to 11 kilowatt rate? Which I think, what would that be?
So I would say initially we're going to have a 7.5 kilowatt charger. That's a 40 amp circuit that we're pulling from a 220 or 240 volt feed. It results in a 32 amp charger. We are looking at building more powerful level 2 chargers, but because what we're doing is finding spare capacity in the adjacent private property rather than connecting directly to the utility, we want it to be at the right, kind of Goldilocks level where it's not too fast that we have to start eliminating potential host properties, and then not so slow that drivers wouldn't be able to charge overnight. And so we basically believe that a 7.5 kilowatt charger is going to charge most vehicles up from 20% to 100%, with an overnight charge. And from the driver's perspective, then it doesn't really matter if your car charges up in 2 hours or 4 hours or 20 minutes for that matter. You're still just going to spend 30 to 60 seconds plugging your car in, and when you come back in the morning, your car is fully charged. So hopefully that made sense. I'll say that we are looking at faster, or let's say higher voltage chargers, especially for folks that have heavy duty vehicles like a Ford F-150 Lightning, This might be people who are also, contractors or small business owners. They may have they may have a Rivian, or they may have a Ford Lightning or something like that they would want a little bit of charging speed. But right now, our core target demographic, again, are people that are just parking their personal vehicles on the street overnight.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I hope that answered your question there, CJ. Definitely. So you're going off of the existing, service and using that. So that dictates the charging rate there. So we talked a little bit about technology. I'm curious for you, what do you think is the next technology in the EV world that, could help with the adoption of EVs?
Yeah, and this is going to be maybe a little bit more around what I think is going to start to happen around. It's more about how I see people thinking about transportation and the built environment. So this again, as I said before, like thinking as an architect, I'm very excited about the possibility, for example, for people who have solar panels on their roof who live in cities, to have those solar panels begin to start charging that EV parked in front of it. There's a lot of things in there that would trip us up if we tried to do that today. So I'm very interested if there's ways to try to figure that out as a business model that could start to make sense to enable more distributed energy generation and locally generated and stored, once people have residential or small scale stationary storage in their commercial buildings. You start to be able to be a lot more flexible about how you generate and store power and what you can do with it. And certainly EV charging is a perfect use case. On the other end of the charger, so to speak, are the batteries in vehicles themselves. And, I forget what the statistic is, but just, even in the next few years, if you're only taking a small percentage of the total number of EVs, and even within a small percentage of the batteries of those EVs, the power potential of those batteries aggregated together is about as much power that we're currently producing in the entire United States. So there is a huge amount of ions, basically, that are just going to be rolling around our city streets, electrons, that is, that can be pushed back into the grid when it's needed. And it's hard for me not to imagine that doesn't become an integral part of how we think about making cities more resilient, more resistant to blackouts, giving cities different ways to manage peak demand besides building fossil-fueled power plants as we see more and more power generation continuing. So those, that kind of interaction between buildings themselves and the cars that they can be attached to is very interesting to us. And there's also then, because each EV charger has a data connection back to the cloud, there's also now suddenly a whole bunch of things that you can start to do with these things. They have a lot of power available, and they have a data connection. And it's sort of interesting to think, well, maybe these things also become IoT devices that start to collect useful information for the cities themselves, and that they can do more than just power somebody's personal vehicle. They can help cities with early flood detection or gunshot warning systems, things like that, which are actually very difficult to execute right now because there isn't really anywhere to find the power and data connection on a typical city sidewalk.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, really, definitely, that's, having everything work together is, I definitely agree with you. It's how do we implement all these technologies into one place? How do they talk to each other? Yeah, absolutely. Well, that was really the bulk of what I wanted to talk about today. And I've definitely learned a lot about curbside EV charging. And so the last thing I just have for you is there anything that we didn't touch on that you'd like to talk about that maybe I didn't ask?
This is something that I say a lot these days, but I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk to your audience, because one thing that's at the core of what we're trying to do right now is to not, let's say, shift the focus away or refocus away the conversation around EV charging and range anxiety and putting EV chargers on highways, because we certainly need to do that. We need to be able to drive from Boston to New York City and feel confident that we can do that. But what we haven't seen so much in this country is attention being paid to where EV charging is still really, truly needed, which is in our cities. The assumption has been really so far that most drivers will just charge their car at home, and that's how we're going to take care of most of the charging demand. But that just simply doesn't work for cities. And to the extent that It's Electric can be part of a larger conversation about just thinking about EV charging infrastructure in cities themselves, that's really one of the things as a very early company that we're just trying to get out there. So I really do appreciate this opportunity, and I encourage your audience to also ponder the role of where do you see people parking? How do these people access EV charging? Is it convenient and affordable enough for them to really consider switching from a gas car to an electric vehicle? And we're interested in hearing where is this most needed? Are we doing it the right way? Are there other models that are getting people excited? But as long as we're starting to put attention into that specific group of drivers that really have been kind of left out of the conversation, that was true when we started the company a couple of years ago, and it's more or less true today.
All right. Well, then I will definitely keep the conversation going. Keep that knowledge out there. And it sounds like you appreciate the feedback from users too. So yes, we'll keep that.
Please.
Yeah. Nathan, again, thank you so much for taking the time to be on with us today. I know you're probably very busy, so I appreciate it a lot. And we'll keep in touch and see you down the road.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
It was really great to meet you, and thanks everyone who tuned in. And you can find us at itselectric.us.
All right. Thanks again, Nathan.
Right.
Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Bye.